why is this particular topic important, and why do you think it's so important for now?
So we were talking earlier about Facebook and the way that echo chamber type phenomena just built into algorithms can, let alone the social tribal type dynamics that are made easier, not in person, lead to echo chambers where people think that most everyone believes kind of the way they do because that's what they're seeing, except those bad guys over there that are far enough away that they only get the caricaturized version of them. And so, I still use Facebook, and I actually use it largely as a tool for understanding social phenomena. And so I've intentionally made friends with and followed people on every side of every political topic who are leading thinkers that other people pay attention to. And so, of course, I'll have a thread where there are some alt-right type people who are commenting, where then left people think that I have become a Nazi, or at least a Nazi supporter, and then decide to unfriend me. And of course, then more conservatively oriented people will see further left perspectives in my thread talking about LGBTQ rights or whatever it is, and think that I am a whatever pejorative, commie, etc. type thing that they think. And I'm just actively trying to see what the various groups in the world think. Because if I don't understand why it's compelling, like if I don't understand the partial truths and the values that they care about, I don't have a chance of understanding reality. And if I don't understand even beyond that why it's compelling, I don't have a chance of possibly engaging in a constructive or meaningful way. So all I can do is villainize them and engage in warfare. And then to various degrees win or lose, but to some degree all lose. And that's a very, very simple thing I would suggest everyone do. If you tend to be left-leaning and most of your friends kind of agree with you about climate change or abortion rights or whatever, I would actually really like you to follow Ben Shapiro, follow the Propertarian Institute, follow follow Heritage Foundation and Cato Institute and whatever, and actually seek to understand both where they're sharing things that you actually didn't know, and even where you really disagree, why it's compelling, with an answer that isn't just because they're all stupid. Because you actually don't have any chance of healing a culture war otherwise. You only have a chance of engaging in it. And if someone happens to be more right-oriented, and of course saying right-left is itself oversimplified, but we'll use that as a simplification for all of the perspectives that are engaged in some kind of warfare that actually need to be engaged in some kind of more generative dialectical conversation. Study intersectionality. Follow some of the thinkers that are actually giving arguments for and history for why some of that's important. Actually read some of the postmodern thinkers. Read Foucault and Derrida and whatever before just saying all postmodernism is stupid. And again, look to see, are there true insights and critiques in there? And can you factor them? Do you understand them? And even where you don't think they're true, can you see why they're compelling? And so that's a very, very easy step. So I'm speaking to why it's important because I think that we have more issues in the world today, from now weaponized drones actually available for sale, pre-made, and the nature of the environmental risks and the massive human migrations that are impending, and the culture wars, and the fact that the culture wars are oriented to a kind of war that is beyond just on Facebook. I think that we have more different issues on more fronts that are more consequential, with the answer not being everyone increasing the quality of their sense making to find solutions that aren't war, because to find solutions that aren't war requires that they're solutions for everybody. There is a degenerate movement towards more groupthink that becomes more polarized. And that is a movement towards warfare in a time that is one that's never desirable, but it's especially not desirable with a world that has as centralized and fragile an infrastructure as ours, where people don't actually grow food and the populations of cities depend upon infrastructure that, if it failed, would totally suck. and where the weapons technology we have is unlike anything we've ever had, like, we can see that these types of patterns have happened in the past and led to war and resets. And I think that that's too costly to happen again. And so outside of everyone recognizing that and having that motivate their willingness to do something really uncomfortable, which is to be willing to disagree with the in-group that they're a part of, even where the in-group will use ostracizing and shaming as a way to hold them in line, and to really engage with other people and perspectives, and to not do the lazy thing of just defecting to the sense-making that someone else that you hold as legitimate authority gave you, but really engaging earnestly with all of the perspectives that you can to try to understand what makes sense, to then also understand what a way forward that doesn't look like war looks like. I don't think there are any good chances for the world unless a lot of people start doing that.
Just picking up on something you said just then, I've often thought that it's really impossible to do good sense making or to orient towards truth unless we're prepared to disagree with our in-group.
The essential thing to good sense making is a commitment to earnestness, like a sincere, profound commitment to earnestness in our sense making, which means that the enemy of that is bias of any kind. And which means vested interest of any kind. And so the desire to fit in my group is a source of bias and vested interest, because my group might have things wrong or be missing stuff. And if they're willing to use, apostasy punishments, if they're willing to use, if you're not with us, you're against us, line in the sand kind of stuff, then they're not engaged in good faith in trying to understand. They think that they have understood enough, and now they're engaged in winning a war. And so if you want to find a way out of war, and so you want to engage in the kind of good sense making that could inform that, then you might be against them if you aren't with them, right? And we can see this again in fundamentalist interpretations of lots of religious views and cultural views on both sides of, the culture war. We can see the way that the left evolved a very profound tool of mimetic shaming to be able to hold a common narrative and to hold the argument that they had the only source of legitimate authority. And that looked like largely kind of capturing control of most of the academies and government institutions and lots of types of media for some period of time, but then saying you're a racist or you're an anti-Semite or you're a misogynist or you're a bigot or you're a xenophobe was effective for a long time to just have people not be able to engage in conversations that might have had some actual legitimacy. We can see, though, that, of course, and I'm not saying anything new here, that as a weapon, right? That type of social shaming as a type of narrative weapon, like in a physical war, when any side gets a new weapon, the other side their engineers start working really fast to make a counter weapon, defenses and better versions of that weapon. And so this is the thing that when you think like, oh, we've got some new narrative that's going to be awesome, or some new stat, or some new method of public engagement, or getting the voters that don't normally vote out, or whatever the thing is, the moment it's successful, everybody will reverse engineer it and attack the basis of how you do it. And so we can see that the coalescing of and the kind of concretization of the alt-right was to a large degree in response to a counter-response to those social shaming tools, which then come to the place of saying like, okay, I'll embrace being a racist. I will embrace having traditional views on gender roles more fully than I might have previously, so that shaming tool doesn't work for me anymore. And grab her by the pussy is totally fine. Like, we'll vote for that guy again. And there are similar kinds of tools used on the right for being able to create in-group cohesion. And so, yes, I think earnestness and sincerity and the desire to understand reality clearly is the foundation, and then the courage to actually ask those questions and say the things that you think and notice in the presence of an in-group that is trying to force you to defect to the center of what that group think is, defect on your own self. There's courage, but there's this interesting combination of courage and humility that has to be there at the same time, which is the courage to say, I don't know if I agree. I don't know that this perspective is adequate, even if I'm compelled partially by it. I don't know that it's adequate. There are some other counter perspectives that a lot of people believe that I'm not going to rule them all as just dumb or pathological. And so I don't know if this perspective is adequate and that more thinking is needed. There's courage to do that, because if you're not with us, you're against us is a powerful tactic. But to have that confidence and at the same time say, I don't know yet what I think is true. That is the humility side that doesn't just have a new hubris that is going to try and be the center of a new narrative warfare and get people to, defect on the other sides to come join that side. So I think like earnestness and sincerity empowered by really deep courage and a deep kind of epistemic humility is going to make someone misfit for every in-group currently, which is the valley crossing that people have to go through to basically leave the forces that are arrayed in a war where all sides are wrong. To hopefully have enough people who do that start to find each other and don't do a new tribal groupthink thing, but all engage in earnest actual thinking themselves and actual conversation without orienting towards groupthink that can start to make a new strange attractor.